Former President George W. Bush calls out the GOP and former President Trump for the harsh rhetoric on immigration. Radical Democrat Maxine Waters faces more fallout from her get more confrontational comments. Plus, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis shows the real way to handle riots and looting. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
And God bless the United States of America.
All right, friends, welcome to the show. Happy Wednesday. I hope you're having a great week. If you're new to the show, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to start with former President George W. Bush because he is making the rounds in the corporate media. He has a new book out there that he's promoting. He's a painter now. So he has a book of paintings of immigrants. And so he's going on ABC, CBS, NBC. And the left-wing media are more than happy to have him because they know that while plugging his book, they can also count on him and coax him into making statements blasting the GOP, blasting President Trump. And that's exactly what has happened this week. He was on CBS, he was on NBC, and he sounds more like a spokesman for the Biden administration than someone who is concerned about border security and illegal immigration. On CBS News, here's his thoughts. Here's what he wants to do about immigration reform.
I don't want to be prescriptive. I don't want to, tell Congress how to do this or that. I do want to say to Congress, please put aside all the harsh rhetoric about immigration. Please put aside trying to score political points on either side. I hope I can help set a tone that is more respectful about the immigrant, which may lead to reform of the system.
All right, so first of all, as you know, the media only call out one side for the so-called harsh rhetoric. So when former President Bush is talking about the harsh rhetoric, he's talking about the GOP. He's talking about the things President Trump would say. And give me a break, folks, because the Democrats never use harsh rhetoric because they don't care. They want open borders. Look at what is going on there. The policies and the word has gotten out. Come over the border. Come over illegally and nothing bad will happen. You might not even get arrested. If you do, you're going to be released. Come over. You can have fake kids with you. It does not matter. We're going to not follow COVID restrictions. We're going to cram people into kids in cages, but we won't say anything about it, and we're going to let you go. But according to the media and former President Bush, it's the harsh rhetoric that's to blame. Give me a break. Here's more.
The problem with the immigration debate is that one can create a lot of fear. They're coming after you. But it's a nation that is willing to accept the refugee or the harmed or the frightened, to me, is a great nation.
Oh my gosh. The United States has always and will always be a welcoming nation for those who are oppressed, for those living in fear, for those being persecuted. We are always a welcoming nation. But to dismiss the real concerns as a fear tactic sounds just like the left-wing media, fear-mongering, as if there are no drug dealers coming across, or sex traffickers, or gang members, or terrorists like the one we just arrested a couple weeks ago. Pretends that that's just rhetoric, that that's just talk, that there's nothing actually bad going on, and we need to welcome everybody. Let's have open borders. Even though later he says, I'm not really in favor of open borders. But he did nothing to go at the Biden administration at all. But then later on, that was a CBS interview. Then he's on NBC. And he takes it up a notch.
It's not beautiful when we condemn, call people names and scare people about immigration.
Yeah.
It's an easy issue to frighten some of the electorate.
Again, it's more of the same. And keep this in mind. When you hear this from the left or someone like President Bush, it means they're not serious about addressing the threats at the border. They're not serious about just letting everybody come in and not addressing the bad things that are going on. But he'll blast the Republicans. He'll blast President Trump, which he did in these interviews. And then President Bush said this.
If you were to describe the Republican Party as you see it today, how would you describe it?
I would describe it as isolationist, protectionist, and to a certain extent, nativist.
Are you disappointed?
Well, it's not exactly my vision.
Isolationist, protectionist, and nativist. Now be careful, because when people start throwing out the word nativist, those on the left, those on the media, they're not just meaning America first. a belief in putting American citizens first. When they start throwing out the word nativist, what they really mean is, hey, what I want you to hear is racist. That's the word I want you to hear. And President Bush is using that word. It's so frustrating and so disappointing. We have real issues at the border, a real crisis, and yet nothing's being addressed. And back to the harsh rhetoric, since this border surge, this border crisis where Joe Biden is doing nothing, actually, he's doing plenty to cause the crisis, where's the harsh rhetoric? Show me where the harsh rhetoric even exists and how it is hurting this problem. Because Joe Biden's policies are doing it, and former President Bush is saying nothing about it. All right, so next let's talk about Maxine Waters. But first, if you're new to the show or haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. And when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified. We're making our push for 150,000 subscribers, and we can do it with your help. All right, let's do a follow-up on Maxine Waters because the fallout is increasing. She's in hot water for over the weekend, those comments about getting more confrontational with the protesters.
What should protesters do?
Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
So remember, former President Trump was impeached for saying to peacefully and patriotically let your voices be heard. Maxine Waters went to a hotbed of ongoing protests, riots, and looting and said we should get more confrontational. And no one's saying anything about it. Well, a few are. House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy put forward a resolution to censure her for those comments. And here's the story. GOP leader Kevin McCarthy introduced a privileged resolution on the House floor Tuesday to censure Representative Maxine Waters for her controversial comments to Minnesota protesters over the weekend, urging them to get more confrontational if ex-Minneapolis cop Derek Chauvin is not found guilty of the death of George Floyd. But Democrats moved quickly to table the resolution in a 216 to 210 party line vote and avoided taking a vote directly on whether to formally reprimand the longtime California Congresswoman. McCarthy's two-page resolution, shared first with Fox News, quotes heavily from Waters' own remarks on April 17th to protesters gathered outside the Brooklyn Center Police Department in Minnesota. So no Democrats have spoken out against Waters. In fact, Pelosi, the Democrats, the media, they seem to be rallying around Waters. Just look at left-wing PBS journalist Yamiche Alcindor. This was at yesterday's White House press briefing.
Representative Waters, as you said, clarified. She said, my actual words don't matter. I wonder why the White House isn't also coming to the defense of Representative Waters, given the fact that she's now facing an onslaught of attacks, especially by, I would say, Republicans. I wonder why the White House isn't saying, we back what she said about being confrontational. She was obviously not threatening violence. There are civil rights leaders that are saying that's what civil rights is to be confrontational, to be active.
Wow. Alcindor passes judgment that Waters is clearly not advocating violence, yet they came down on former President Trump, who was clearly advocating peaceful protesting. She is prodding the White House to do something to get even more on Waters' side. So fortunately, not everyone agrees with Alcindor and these views, and here's more. Republicans argued that Waters needed to be censured for allegedly inciting violence in a highly charged atmosphere around Minneapolis. The city has been on edge during the Chauvin trial and following the killing of Daunte Wright, the 20-year-old black man who was shot by a police officer on April 11th. I'd like to see Maxine Waters apologize for the inflammatory comments that she's made inciting violence, Representative Steve Scalise said Tuesday in support of the censure resolution. It's a powder keg down there. The last thing you want to do is make it worse. Friends, this is a powder keg across the country because any story that fits the left-wing narrative is pushed. It's hyped to the point of rioting and looting and nonstop violence. If a story doesn't fit the narrative, which we've seen several examples in the last couple of weeks, how much news are they making? It's just ignored. It's just pushed aside. But you find that one story, one of those rare stories through the day-to-day interactions that cops have every single day in every single city and town, doesn't fit the narrative, it's ignored. It does, it is hyped to the point of craziness. There has to be accountability. You can't have Maxine Waters going inciting violence and nothing happened when former President Trump said to peacefully protest and he was impeached. They tried to kick him out of office. There is no doubt that Maxine Waters should be censured. All right, so now let's talk about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, because talk about the flip side of the Maxine Waters and these blue states, blue cities that would rather let their communities burn to the ground than stand up against rioting and looting. Ron DeSantis says, no way, that's not going to happen. You riot, you loot, you hurt people, you hurt police officers, you're going to jail. And here's the story. Governor Ron DeSantis on Monday signed into law Florida's anti-riot bill, which increases penalties for crimes committed during riots and is aimed at combating public disorder. If you look at the breadth of this particular piece of legislation, it is the strongest anti-rioting, pro-law enforcement piece of legislation in the country, DeSantis said at a press conference. There's just nothing even close. Florida's Senate passed the bill last week, 23-17. It was seen as a response to protests around the country stemming from police brutality against African Americans. So now this bill, this law in Florida is so different than what you see in these blue states, these blue cities, because they take it seriously. They say if the people are blocking the road, you can get through. It's okay. If you hurt someone, you're going to jail. If you hurt cops, you're going to jail. It protects your constitutional rights to peacefully assemble and protest, but not riot, loot, and have violence. So many of those situations that the Democrats and the media covered, and they said they were peaceful protests. Remember this one? Just look at this. The CNN headline reads, "Fiery but mostly peaceful protest after police shooting." I mean, that guy looks like he's a war correspondent. Everything is burning in the background, yet it's a mostly peaceful protest. That's not how DeSantis is following things. Check out what he said.
If you riot, if you loot, if you harm others, particularly if you harm a law enforcement officer during one of these violent assemblies, you're going to jail. We're going to hold you accountable. Some of the local governments are actually telling, not necessarily in Florida, but throughout the country, telling police to stand down while cities burnt, while businesses were burnt, while people were being harmed. If you tell law enforcement to stand down, then you're responsible for the damage that ensues. We're not going to let the mob win the day.
We're not going to let the mob rule the day. What a refreshing attitude. It's refreshing because all you see in the news are the riots, the looting, the cities burning to the ground, businesses destroyed, people displaced. Left doesn't care about that. They want the riots, the chaos, because it leads to more power. It leads to more control. Good for DeSantis. All right, now let's talk about Congressman Burgess Owens, because he was speaking yesterday, speaking out against this left-wing push to compare the Georgia voter ID law to Jim Crow. It's absolutely outrageous, but the media and Democrats, they don't care. They'll say it anyway. Even Joe Biden, who has said that these laws are Jim Crow on steroids. Does he have a clue? Does he think the American people are that dumb to make the comparison? Well, Burgess Owens has had enough. He is speaking out about the outrageous comparison between actual Jim Crow laws and voter ID. And here's Owens.
In the 7th grade, my school never received new books. Instead, we received books from the all-white school across town. At service stations, there were white men-only restrooms, white women-only restrooms, and a filthy restroom in the back of the station for black Americans designated as colored. In addition, Jim Crow laws like poll tax, property tests, literacy tests, and violence and intimidation at the polls made it nearly impossible for black Americans to vote.
So those are examples of real Jim Crow laws. Voter ID is not that. But that doesn't stop Joe Biden. It doesn't stop him from saying it's Jim Crow on steroids. And here's more from Owens.
The section of the Georgia law that has brought so much outrage from the left, it simply requires any person applying for absentee ballot to include evidence of a government-issued ID on their application. If a voter does not have a driver's license or ID card, that voter can use a current utility bill, bank statement, government check, paycheck, or any other government document that shows a name and address of this voter.
So you get the idea. This law makes it easy to verify yourself. If you want an ID, you can get one for free in Georgia. And then Owens, thankfully, he brings up a point that I raise all the time because the Democrats love to throw around racism. They love to say that this is all about keeping the black man down. But who is really using the dehumanizing rhetoric? Whose talk, whose actions actually make people feel like second-class citizens. Here's Owen.
What I find extremely offensive is a narrative from the left that black people are not smart enough, not educated enough, not desirous enough for education to do what every other culture and race does in this country, get an ID.
So Owens is absolutely right, and it makes you ask, what are the Democrats thinking? What do they really believe? That if you're black, you're somehow incapable of getting an ID, that you can't make the effort to go get one, that you don't understand how to do it? It's absolutely insulting, but they're never called out on it. Thankfully, Burgess Owens is speaking out. Folks, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell so you'll be notified, and we'll see you next time. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour. Okay, friends, thanks so much for watching. And before you go, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you'll be notified. And here's a special video just for you so you can watch even more of the 13-minute news hour. And don't forget to check out GOPusa.com for the best in conservative news and commentary. We'll see you next time.